Going once.
Hey.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of day. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active organizational design, product centricity, and large scale product development meetup. This is also AKA as Large Scale Scrum. Your host, Gene Gendel. Thank you for joining today. I would love to introduce my very special and dear host, Tim Arkell. I will say just a few words about Tim, but also will mention Tim is my ex-colleague, ex-coworker, someone I truly deeply respect, and was very methodical and selective when I brought Tim, asked him to join today. So without just a few words about Tim and his career, he's got about 20 years, 20 plus years of experience in technology as a leader, coder, and the coach. In fact, I remember back from the days, he was one of a very few um, trainers and coaches at the very large, the largest, I think, bank in the world, where I had the pleasure to work. He used to teach Lean Agile, LSD, Lean Agile software development. So his career is very versatile. He helped organizations and teams develop responsive and adaptive ways of working in very complex organizational environments. In his current role, Tim makes mainly focuses on enabling teams to deliver exceptional business value by embracing agile and lean principles and applying them effectively at scale. His passion also lies in helping organizations evolve, fostering collaboration, improving delivery practices, and driving continuous learning and development. And I could probably go on and say great things about Tim, but I will just make him blush. I'd rather not do that. I just wanted to pass the baton over to him so he can run with it and share his wisdom with us. Okay, so please, everyone, keep your mics off, cameras on as much as you can, and hold your questions until Tim calls upon you. Many thanks, Tim. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Gene. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice and cozy little group, but I dare say you might have a few people join later, and if you're recording it, a few other people might look later when they have some time. It's 5 o'clock here in the UK, or 10 past 5, so we've got about 50 minutes. I put this together, and I'll start by just giving you a little bit of journey because I Gene has been asking me for about 3 years. Tim, come and talk, come and talk. I've known Gene for a long time, probably 12, 13 years, maybe something like that. And as he said, we work together. Been asking me to come and present some stuff. So when I finally succumbed to Gene's relentless pressure, I said, "Okay, I'll come and talk, Gene. I'll come and talk. What do you want me to talk about? I don't know. You talk about anything you want." I said, okay, well, our common theme that we have together is lean and agile software development. That's what I did, and but we worked in the same organization. We'll come on to that shortly. So we came up with a title which was Real Life Examples and Anecdotes from Lean Agile Software Development Coach, aka me. And so I had to think, right, okay, what am I going to say? How will I present this? What can I say that's interesting and even relevant today? Because the world's changed so fast. So I had a mull about it, and then I thought, well, what do I actually do today in terms of my job? So I think the best way to approach this is for me to give you a little bit of background first about my journey. In other words, where I started from in terms of work, how I got to be a LASD coach, and then I'm going to pivot. So I didn't tell Gene this. I'm going to pivot away maybe from the LASD side of things, but I do want to touch on LASD, Lean Agile Software Development, briefly, because it's relevant and it was in the title. So let me start by saying who I am, what I've done. So I left university in a long time ago. So it was 1991, and I went straight into the oil industry. And I worked. I didn't work in software for the first more than a decade of my working career. So I worked in for a company called Schlumberger. Some of you may have heard of them. They're quite big in the oil industry, and I was offshore UK drilling oil wells at the age of 21. So in the middle of the North Sea, right up near the Arctic Circle, on a big oil platform, doing this drilling thing. It's quite interesting. It was part of the drilling process. We were doing directional drilling, used some computery type stuff then, so microvac systems. Some of you might know there was the software, the operating system we used was called I think the operating system was called TSX Plus, and it was on some sort of PDP-11s or whatever. Ancient stuff, but still quite exciting at the time. I did that for a few years, decided nah, I wanted to change. Wasn't quite conducive to a good life. You know, you're always spending your time offshore. So I got into the water industry, did a master's degree in engineering hydrology, and did that for about 9 years. Interesting, lots of mathematics, statistics, etc. Then in about 2002, so only 24 years ago, I said to my lovely wife, I want to change again. And she went, oh God, because we had young kids at the time. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a web developer. I see all these young kids making buttloads of money, making bank, doing web development. And she went, oh, okay then. So I did another master's degree. I left work, but I didn't become a web developer. I became a software engineer. And that's where the journey, the relevance here, I think, to what I'm going to talk a little bit about. So that was in 2002. I graduated, um, did quite well. Got a distinction, I don't know if that's a thing, but in a master's degree, became all loved up in particularly in Java and object-oriented software development. Worked for a few small companies, and then I got a job with a big organization. It's the organization where Gene and I met, but not at this time. So this was back in 2003. So I joined this organization and I quickly realized it was horrible. It was a terrible way to work. And you used to get people shouting at you, and it was quite an abrasive, aggressive situation, if you like. I really didn't like it. And I was questioning whether I'd made the right decision moving into software. Maybe I should have just stayed in civil engineering, which is what I did in the water industry, so to speak. So I decided I needed a change. So after 3 years with this big bank, who I'll tell you it was later when I start saying nice things about them, because it was horrible. It was quite hateful. Maybe it was just my situation and the area where I was, but I was in a location called Bournemouth in the UK. Anyway, so I left and I went to a smaller team, a smaller organization, still global, but quite small, and a small software team. And we did this crazy thing called XP, and it was extreme programming. And I didn't know a lot about it at the time, but that was my first introduction to Agile and agility. So that was in 2007. And the world changed for me. And I suddenly realized that I wasn't the bottom of the pecking order and had to tug my forelock to project managers and get I'm going to say abused because it wasn't a nice place to work in those days. Being a software developer was actually one of the most important things for a technology company because you were the people who were delivering value. So I fell in love again with software and the process, and we did test-driven development and we did built pipelines. This is back in 2007. We were doing DevOps before the term DevOps was even coined, I think. And I think that was in about 2009, and probably reading the Phoenix Project or one of those, so maybe I got it from there. But in so we did all that, and then it was about 5 years later, a former colleague of mine from said bank came to me and said, "Do you want to come back to the bank?" And because I heard you doing this agile thing, and we're starting to do it. And I went, no way, never, never, ever, not never, 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 never coming back. It was horrible. Never, ever. How much? So we had a little discussion, and I ended up going back because work goes in cycles, and it was a good thing to do, I thought, to go and try and peddle my wares and help implement because they were genuine about wanting to change. So that organization, who I since had a very good relationship, was JP Morgan Chase. So I went back and worked for them for the second time. And I was very lucky that a couple of years after having led a few teams and when we were tiptoeing our way through some areas, starting to implement Agile, I got asked to join with a group that were going through something called the Lean and Agile software development as a team, so that we could learn and take it back to our teams and use it and implement it. So that was in 2013, and that was it had been introduced into the bank by a consultant, and this guy was called Craig Larman. And some of you'll know Craig Larman from less, but he also did Lean and Agile software development. So I've just put a summary here. Let me just see if I can advance. Oops, bear with me 1 second. There we go. Minor panic there. So lean agile software development. Let me just give you a little bit of a flavor of what it is, because I think it's important in the context of what I'm going to discuss. It's known as LASD or LASD, LASD we called it. It was approach to software creation and solving business needs, a particular approach. And it focused very much on team collaboration. Now, I might be teaching you to suck eggs here. I know a lot of you will do this. It's the crowd that we've got here. Anybody's listening today or listening on the recording, you're going to say, yeah, yeah, we know that. That's a great way to do things. But, 12 years ago, there weren't so many people doing it, certainly not in the big organizations. So it focused very much on visual group modeling using lightweight, low fidelity techniques with lightweight UML and user-centered thinking. It was, in fact, outside in engineering. So you started at a point where you start thinking, what's big picture? What's the 30,000-foot view? And then you gradually go through all your requirements engineering together as a team. Lots of modeling, in other words, using, and I say low fidelity, I mean pen and whiteboard or pen and flip chart. And you hone it down to get a shared understanding. That was the whole premise of LASD. It was very hands-on, it was collaborative, it included test-driven development and acceptance test-driven development. It was a 5-day course. In fact, it was a series of courses, but the primary course was a 5-day course, and teams went through it together to learn. So it was amazing. And as I said, it was created by Craig Larman. It was introduced into JP Morgan in 2013. And it was delivered by in-house teachers and used for some years on the graduate program. Eventually, in about 2015, they introduced it to their technology graduate program. It was in 2014 that I was asked, because I was a cheerleader for it and the teams, I was asked to go on the second cohort of people they were going to train up to be able to deliver it. So that's sort of when my life changed again in terms of software, and it was a big moment for me being asked to go on this, and that's where I met Gene actually. So in 2014, packed my bags, waved goodbye to the young family. It wasn't forever, and they came to visit me anyway, and landed in Brooklyn, and worked at Metrotech, where JP Morgan had one of their offices, and with Craig Larman and lots of other teams, real teams, we learnt how to deliver the LASD program, and it was great. It was fantastic. Since then, I've taken it and I've run with it. And after a few years, actually, I got to own the program internally in JP Morgan, and delivered it globally across many continents, many, many, many times, tens of times. I ended up leaving on good terms, JP Morgan in 2018, and decided to go off on my own and consult or contract. But I often referred back to um, the material and the knowledge that I'd gained from Lean Agile software development. Um, it was an amazing thing. It was a thing of its time, but it's still relevant today. Now I've got some anecdotes. They don't all relate, or necessarily any of them relate to me teaching LASD, because I was predominantly teaching LASD in-house for JP Morgan. But I then went on, as I said, and I consulted and contracted to cross mainly finance, but other industries as well. And I used the lean agile software development bits of it, and certainly the tools and the visual modeling in my teaching practices. So hopefully I've given you a little bit of my Cynefin, if you like, the place of my multiple belongings, because this is part of it. But as I said, I went on, and I my journey as a coach and a trainer continued for a few years after I left JP Morgan. But I sort of got attracted back, and one of the things occurred to me, that I can't always make a huge impact as a coach. You are constrained by the very nature that you often coming in as a contractor. You're given a fair amount of free reign, but you're still working for a big boss. Now, if that leader doesn't necessarily buy into it, or the person at the top of the tree, you're often on a hiding to nothing. You can only take it so far before it will fall flat or the program gets pulled. And I know a lot of people will resonate with that. You can take it to a certain degree. So I decided a few years ago, well, maybe a number of years ago, and I gradually migrated into this to move more into the leadership space. But to be a leader, I'm hoping, and I hope this is how I demonstrate it, who applies agile thinking, and ways of working. And my leadership approach, hopefully, is very, at least I believe it is, I'll try anyway, to be an agile leader. So I'm currently a head of engineering for a company. I've been head of engineering for a few companies, and probably the biggest job I had was in a fintech organization in London, and I was the VP of engineering for 2.5 years for them. Um, Worked out quite well. Things come in natural cycles. I ended up moving on. Um, and working in these leadership positions really does enable you to, I can pull in coaches. So people like me and people I've worked with, I can say, right, I can grill them and interview them and they can't give me any BS because I know what I'm talking about, hopefully. So I get good coaches in, good trainers in, but I can give them the support they need to make real and impactful change in an organization. And that's what we've been trying to do. Now, agile seems to become a dirty word in some areas. I still use it. I don't fear to use it. But you can call it what you want. Real engineering, proper grown-up thinking, a way to deliver things, adaptive, whatever. It's just how we build software and deliver solutions for business across businesses nowadays. So that's this is sort of my pivot, Gene. Well, everybody. So I was going to come in and originally I started thinking about, well, what can I talk about lean agile software development? So I'm not going to talk too much about this. I want to sort of change the focus a little bit and talk maybe a bit more about leadership and agile and give you some of my thoughts on this. So I've changed the title now. So I've changed the title of this talk, and it's Agility and Leadership Mid-Flight. Gene, what do you think of that? Mid Agility and Leadership Thoughts and Reflections. So I'm probably not going to teach you any. That's not my intention to teach anything. It's thoughts and reflections. So this is my take on things. Um, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants always because original thoughts, maybe they're things I've gleaned from elsewhere, conversations with people, internet, YouTube experience. But so if any of these are familiar, don't go, we've seen that before, you fraud. No, it's my gathered thoughts and reflections. Um, this says it for me because I've been in organizations like this before, or maybe not been brought in, but what if we don't change it all and something magical happens? That's never the case. Change is inevitable, right? But change takes effort, energy, patience, and this is my favorite word when we talk about change is grit. It takes bloody grit. It really does. You've got to be hard-nosed at times. And often it's not a nice place to be when you're a leader because you've got to hire and fire for sure. I didn't have to do that as a coach. I could just waltz in and do my thing and waltz away. But I actually like the place that I've been because I think you can make real and impactful change. But there are downsides to it. But you've got to exercise grit. If there's one word I would say to make change, it's grit. Now, the word change is a little bit overloaded in the next few things I'm going to talk about. Because I'm not just talking about change as in how do we change and become agile. There's the aspect of change, which is daily change, in other words, implementing features, software, solutions for business. So apologies for that, but it's a multifaceted or meaning word change. So when I say change in technology, I'm sort of flipping the meaning here now. It's back to why do technology teams sometimes struggle with change? These are the questions that go through my head. Why do they struggle? Um, so, I can leave you with that for a minute, but not for too long. I don't think it's because of the lack of skill necessarily. For sure, you've got to help people improve. Sometimes that doesn't work out when it goes back to the hiring and firing piece. But generally, it's not because of lack of skills. It's because the change that we're trying to make, and this could apply to transformational change, but I'm thinking more about daily change, if you like, or change of building software. Change is actually ambiguous. Well, actually, it applies across all change. Change is ambiguous. It really is. So change is ambiguous. That's a given. Change is constant. It's absolutely, of course it is by its very nature. We always want more features. But even if you think of change from a transformation point of view, transformation isn't a project. Transformation and agile implementation isn't we'll do it in 2 years and then we're done. No, it's a lifestyle choice. It's forever, right? I know you know this. So again, I said I'm not going to try and teach you anything you don't know. But so implementing agility must include the ability to increase learning velocity. As I said, I'm sort of parroting other people saying this now. If you know the fifth discipline, Peter Senge, talking about systems thinking, you'll know he talks about learning organization in that piece of work that he wrote. So learning velocity here is how do we help teams in an agile way, but it could be in any sort of methodology. But let's be honest, most people are doing something agile or agile like nowadays in our business. But how do we help them become quicker at learning so that they can then deliver quickly? So when I first started coaching, like 10, 12, 15 years ago, I used to be talking about, and I had a slide. I did have it in this deck, but I took it out. I thought it was a bit superfluous, but I'll talk about it. What's agility? Well, agility is the business, is the ability to deliver value quicker. While retaining quality and doing it continuous, sustainable pace, etc. But it's not just that. You have to build in learning velocity to teams. And again, is that insightful? Well, it took me a time to realize the importance of that, how important that actually is. You can't just expect teams to get on with it, even if they're quite highly intelligent, well experienced software engineers. You need to build in the ability to increase learning velocity. In addition to that, changing technology, boundaries, responsibilities, and authority levels are often poorly defined when adopting agile, or maybe not just agile, but any sort of transformation when you're transforming to or any change in process, if you like. So that's another key aspect of why teams will struggle. So not just learning velocity, but we've got to clearly define what they can and can't do. So I'll go on to that in a short while, hopefully cover it. But this is another question that I pose or have posed. Why do transformations, let's say agile, because that's the business I've been in, the business a lot of us are in, why do they fail? Or why are they at least suboptimal? Because I don't think we see catastrophic failures. I haven't. Some people have, where they've been involved in an agile transformation. It just has gone wrong, and then they've reverted to this crazy old way of doing things, whatever people call it. I'm not going to say waterfall, but it's doing something that was, oh, let's go back to what we used to do. Why are they suboptimal? Why don't they hit the sweet point that we really thought they would hit? And it's not because of tooling. Of course, we know that. It's not because of Jira being implemented badly and you've got terrible workflows. It's not. It never is. It's not because of tooling, really, truly. It's because of leadership. So that's me. It's on me now. It's because of me. Terrible me. On the whole, I mean, there's going to be other things there, and I have to fix them. But I truly believe it's because of leadership behaviors. So I'm sure we've all talked about this. Adopting agile within teams or helping teams to progress to become more agile. It's not an implementation, a process implementation. It truly is a mindset shift. And I've talked about this for years, but the more I think about it, the more it's so important. This mindset shift in the way that we do things. And it's leaders who need to be there promoting that and enabling it. Um, other reasons why it fails, measuring output rather than outcomes, of course. What's your velocity? Well, it's less than that team over there. You're comparing bananas with oranges. It doesn't work like that. Terrible metrics, I know. I'm not going to get into that. You'll be familiar with that, I'm sure. So-called self-organizing teams being managed by command and control style. Now, I do have a little anecdote on this. If we've got time, I'll try and get to it fairly soon. This is a crazy thing, and I have seen this failure before. Not when I was doing my leadership roles, but when I was actually in a coaching gig about 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, let's say. I'll talk about that when I've got some anecdotes to share. So Agile really does expose leadership gaps. That isn't a phrase that I picked up. I think that I thought of. I'm sure I saw it somewhere, but it really resonated with me. Can't remember whether I read it or saw it on the internet or whatever. But it does expose leadership gaps. So what does leadership actually mean? It must mean enablement. So we need to encourage these leader models. I know you'll all be have done it. You've seen the video and you've read the book, Turn the Ship Around. Okay, leader, what's your intent? Aye, aye, sir, it's to do this or whatever. It is actually a great book. It's a lovely book. So those leader models that are described in books like Turn the Ship Around, set vision and direction, remove impediments and constraints, allow time and safety for innovation and experimentation. These cannot just be grand words that we set out at the start. This is what we will do when we move to Agile. You have to do them as a leader. I know this, or it'll fall flat on its backside. It really will. So these are the things I know are actual. They're truisms. Build capabilities. You've got to work hard at building the capabilities, identify where your gaps are, and then build them in order to succeed. And shift governance to teams. There's a lot of talk about self-organizing teams, but sometimes when the rubber hits the road, yeah, people revert to type, leaders panic. I wrote a paper about, I think it was about 5, 6 years ago for a company I was working for, and it was called Agile Governance, what it really means. And it was all about, well, it was basically just taking bits of the Scrum Guide and other works and going, you've really actually got to do this. This is what you've got to do. Shift left, if well, one context of shift left, but we've got to push as much governance as we can to those self-organizing teams. In other words, get rid of the old stage gate approach. And again, I know many people are doing this, but it's a focus we've got to keep. We have to keep that. So what is required of agile leaders? Again, it's been talked to death, psychological safety. How many people actually do that? What does it actually mean? Psychological safety. I've got a few things written down. Um, in terms of psychological safety, what was I thinking of? Oh yeah, right, okay. Yeah. In terms of psychological safety, creating those environments where people can actually speak up and they don't hide the problems that they've had, that they might be having. So it's vitally important. So that's a culture shift, and uh, and it's not so much with the teams I've observed. It's maybe with other leaders and people that they might fear. So you've got to create those safe spaces. It's absolutely vital. Adaptive stability in teams. What does this actually mean? Again, this was a phrase I picked up from somewhere else. Adaptive stability. Is it an oxymoron? No, not really. Adaptive stability, it means that you're stable in your direction, but you've got to be adaptive in the exit or flexible in your execution. Let's talk about it like that. So adaptive stability, I quite like that phrase. Balanced autonomy and alignment. You can't have too much of one or the other. Too much autonomy can lead to crazy things happening. People not doing the right thing. Um, Too much alignment and it becomes command and control again, if you think about it like that. So it's set the direction, give that governance to the teams. This is another way of saying what I've said before about agile governance. Technical excellence, one of my favorites. You won't be surprised to hear this because I am a software geek at heart, Java, object-oriented stuff. I've talked a lot about that, and we taught it on the LASD program as well. Technical excellence, you've got to continually push to achieve that, and the world is changing at such a pace. I'm not going to get into all of that now, but it's something that I do put a lot of time and focus on with the teams that I'm working with at the moment. Decentralized, where appropriate, decision making again goes back to that agile governance piece. The ability to deal with resistance to change. Now, I did have a slide on this, but you'll probably know the one. It's where there's some cavemen pushing a truck with square wheels, and someone comes in and says, "Do you want these?" No, 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 we're too busy. We don't need your help. These round proper wheels instead of these square things. People don't like change is tough for a lot of people. So you have to be really strong and gutsy and bold in a leadership position, enable the coaches and give them whoever's coming into work with you, as a coach, let's say, or a trainer, the power and authority to be saying, no, this is the way that it's going. And we have to deal with resistance to change in that sort of way. Being forthright, take the time to explain to people the necessity to change. Um, what else? Oh, provide clear intent, but with guardrails. Okay. organizational guardrails. Again, nothing new here or groundbreaking, but these are the thoughts and reflections that are still relevant to me as I would have talked about them 10 years ago, maybe, but maybe didn't quite understand how important they were as a leader because I wasn't in that leadership position then. So I went back over them. I thought these are still vitally important. So this agile leadership thing, it's a philosophy and it's not a project to implement. You have to treat it like that. And I still do. At least I think I do. I hope I do. Um, right, I'm just going to talk about a few stories. The tale of the because I did the original title was Anecdotes and Examples. So some of these are a bit bat whatever crazy. Um, I'll talk through the command and control leader. Okay, the command and control leader. I once did this gig for a bank, not the one that Gene and I worked in, or Jason. Well, maybe you worked in this bank as well. I don't know. So this bank used to in the UK be called the Midland Bank, and then it was bought out by a bank that has um, uh, some names of places in the Far East, but it's still a UK bank. And it was to become an agile coach, a very well paid agile coach on contract. Actually, I did really well out of that. But to help them be better at agile, if you like, I was like, okay, I'll take that gig. Got the money, went in. The guy who was in charge went, right, we've got you in. That's great. And I was in through a third party company, but the manager, I'm not going to call him a leader because he was no means a leader. He was very much a manager as opposed to a leader. Got me in and said, right, I want OKRs as to your performance. I was like, oh, okay. I was a bit taken aback, but at least he talked about OKRs, which was okay. Quickly, I found out that he was in every stand up, berating people, demanding things, shouting at the team. I tried my hardest. I tried my hardest. There were people coming to me and crying, grown adult human developers, not quite crying, but saying, we can't cope with it. We can't cope with it. I'm going to actually fess up and say this was a failure because I was a coach at this time. I didn't have the authority or the power, and despite my best efforts of going, you cannot do this. You're not allowed in stand-ups. I am allowed in stand-ups. You don't know the pressure I'm under. We're not delivering. The team actually were delivering. They were delivering really quickly. And they were a third-party group of very highly skilled engineers. If this gentleman had just left us to do the right thing and we'd have delivered a lot quicker. We lost team members, etc., etc. And it was all because he was dictating how things were to work. I don't even know why they got me in there, if I'm honest. I lasted 4 months. On the day I was about to leave, he said, "Oh, I've really enjoyed working with you, Tim." I nearly laughed in his face because I really, seriously, you enjoyed working with me? You've been nothing but a pain for me. So, despite it being quite a good, well-paid gig, I left and I thought there's nothing more I can do. That was a failure on my part, failure to be able to deal with him. I've got excuses, which was I didn't have the authority there, but it's still real and it still happens, that command and control. Disruptive ego-driven developers. Oh, this was another cool one. This was more recent. This is when I was the VP of engineering, so I did have some power here, but I was slightly hamstrung by one of the founders being great friends with some of these ego-driven developers. Um, have you ever come across people who actually do the thing they accuse others of, maybe in life? And they say, "Oh, these people are all liars, and it's all fake news and whatever." And actually, sorry, I'm not trying to get political, but it's a real thing. When people do say that, it's often them that are doing it. This was this bunch. They were saying we've got low ego. They had far from low ego. It was a group of developers who'd set themselves up as an innovation group. They thought they knew what agile was, which meant no testing because they were agile. They didn't test anything. There's more detail to that because they blew things up and cost the company a load of money, but they lived off their ego. They'd been in the organization a long time, long before me. And this was one of those occasions that I referred to earlier where I actually had to come down with a hammer and say, no, thanks, goodbye. And they were and I had to have a battle with the founder, not just the CEO, but with the founder. And this is a triple unicorn organization. So worth 3 billion, two founders who own 90% of the equity. I'm not quite shouting. I'm having a battle with one of the founders who didn't want me to sack three developers because he knew them from when he started the company. I did end up sacking them, but it sort of was the end. It was a decline then, and about a year later, it was part of the reason why I said I think I need to move on. But you've got to be bold in these situations, and that was one time where I, as an agile leader, I'd say this is not good enough, and they really were killing productivity and making lots of people. And I had 120 developers globally in my group, and there was three developers who were causing all the noise globally as well. They were all three based in London, but it's a global world now. That was a terrible situation. A CEO and a chief architect who didn't understand teams. Well, they claimed they did, but then we were trying to implement some change, and they brought in a consultant. Now, this is also when I was the VP of engineering, and they said we've the consultant has recommended that we don't have teams anymore. I was like, what the hell? And he goes, what we're going to do is we're going to have these groups of people globally, and then we just pick them and we put them in and they do some work and then they move them on to different work. And I said, this is old school thinking. What are you talking about? I said to the CEO, I said, you've even told me you read team topologies for God's sake. And the chief architect was like, well, what problem are you trying to solve creating these highly effective self-organizing teams? I put my head in my hands. I battled and battled for about 2 months with them. I had all my heads of engineering, four heads of engineering globally, who were crying at me, going, "What are we going to do?" So two of them threatened to leave. So I won that battle. But again, that was another nail in the coffin for me. So we did create teams, and as far as I'm aware, and I still have people in that organization. It's only 2 years ago. Um, I went head to head, not only with the founder, but and won. I went head to head with the CEO and the chief architect and won. But there's always a price to pay. And that came about 18 months later. And it was due to energy and me just going, I can't do this anymore, because I'd had so much trouble with them. But I got the organization to a point. I recruited some excellent principal engineers, got rid of a few other people. Um, that CEO and that chief architect actually got fired about 3 months after I left. So, what goes around comes around. I'm just saying. But it was a tough gig, but we made some great progress there. So I'm quite proud of that. That was a win. So the first one was a bit of a failure. The other two were wins. The best working fun I ever had, I think this is the last one. Best working fun I ever had was actually in a training gig. I'll tell this now because it was so much fun. It was after I'd left JP Morgan, but it was my first gig. It was about 2 months, so it was 2000 and end of 2018. And I got a job with a bank, and I don't mind saying who they are because I'm not going to be rude about them. It's a UK bank called Lloyds Bank, and I was one of their agile trainers. They needed a group of agile trainers, so they recruited four of us, and I was one of them on a pretty good day rate, I must be honest. And I went all around the UK teaching this course that we put together ourselves, sort of on the fly, called Agile Essentials. I just thought I'd call it out because it was so much fun. And it was so impactful for that organization. Now, the UK organizations, the UK banks are about 5 to 10 years behind the US ones, I've observed, in terms of the way they change very slowly. But this was their attempt in 2018 to go a bit more agile, and we made it work, and it was great fun. But I'll just say I haven't had so much fun in work for many, many years. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy my work now. That was the best. I got to travel, I should say, on a weekly basis up in Edinburgh. I was up there once a month. That's a cool city if you ever get to go there. Manchester, London, quite a lot. So got a lot of traveling in. Fly on a Monday morning up to Scotland, work, come back on a Thursday, sometimes a Friday. Great, brilliant time. New teams every single day. I think in that year, I trained 2,500 people in classroom at about maximum of 30 people a go. So it was relentless. I had a voice like an opera singer by the end of it. I was quite good voice anyway. But I used to use those vocal zone lozenges just to keep me going. And honestly, but that was really the best gig I ever had. That was fun. My key takeaways. So I'm going to wrap this up now because we're near the end. Engineering discipline to win. Again, you won't be surprised to hear this, those of you who know me. Automate, automate, automate. Okay, it speaks for itself. Clean code. I'm a huge believer in clean code. Love it. I swallowed the whole Uncle Bob pill many years ago in what he was promoting, and I live by that. Alongside the LASD work that I did. Effective documentation. That was one of our LASD courses actually. When I say effective documentation, don't document for the sake of it. Document what's necessary and just in time. Document immediately after the fact. Use some of those LASD techniques that we had, which was lean agile modeling, not to look forward speculatively, but to look back. So you can use the same techniques using UML and visual modeling, but on stuff that actually exists, and you get to create good documentation there. Um, Demand this of your teams. As a leader, I demand it. Refinement, refinement, refinement. When I first started building software, what do I want to talk about it for? It's again, I know many of you will know this, but this is one of the things I will insist on. If you're not doing backlog refinement, there's a problem in the team. Okay, so I want to see it as a leader, and I'll dip into the teams and go, when's your refinement sessions? Can I come and join? Maybe I can help you out with some spec by example, etc. And so I have done it recently, um, much to the shock of the teams. What's he doing here? Don't don't I'm your friend, right? Well, sort of. I'm still your boss, but I'm here to help. That's the message I try and put over. You need allies and competency. I think I've spelled allies right. Allays? Maybe not. No, I haven't. I put allays. Okay, I only knocked this deck together. It's allies, it should be, as in the allies. Um, I'll change the deck before I give you the PDF, Gene. So I mean ally. You do need allies when you're doing any change or in leadership positions. You absolutely must have, and you do need competency. So you've got to identify your gaps, help people upskill, and if you can't, you know, it's a conversation to have. But most of the time, I'm upskilling people and helping them on their journey. I'd say the vast majority of time. But you need to build a cohort of allies who think like-minded people who know how good software is. I'm currently working with an organization. We have a founder. He's a lovely guy. He sometimes still doesn't get what I'm trying to do. It's a startup that scaled very rapidly over 10 years. I do have him phoning me up on a weekend going, so I calm him down. But you need a group of allies to say, I'm worn out this week. Can you go and talk to the big boss who owns the company and just tell him to just chill out, go and have a holiday. Just let the grown-ups deal with it for a bit. I don't quite say that to him because he is my boss, but you know where I'm going with that. Compromise and pragmatism are vitally important. But sometimes you can't. You just got to stick to your guns, like I did with the CEO and the chief architect. I wasn't going to compromise on destroying all the teams that we had. I was trying to rebuild the teams. So that was a case where I didn't. Most of the time during the day, you're pragmatic, right? Yeah, okay. Are we doing have we implemented Scrum via the Scrum guide? Well, more or less. It's Scrum, and that's sort of all right. Maybe there's valid reasons. More often than not, there are valid reasons. But there you go. Um, Final thoughts, and then probably only 5 minutes, Gene. But TDD is still awesome, and it's even faster with AI. I'm just saying this. Now, I haven't mentioned AI. You probably think, does this guy live in the real world? Of course, I'm all over AI, and we've got a strategy that I'm implementing, both for some of the features that we're building, for the products that I have, that the group that I'm working with have, but also to empower, what's the term? Enhance the workforce. And in agile working as well, it's really good for cleaning up roadmaps. For You can use tools for backlog prioritization, and in test-driven development, it's brilliant because you can help him. The red-green refactor cycle, just there's ways to do it if you're using all the right tools. GitHub Copilot. I'll use a lot of Claude Code, or the teams do. So we use a lot of AI, but we use it with caution. There's always a cautionary tale. So, but it's here to stay. You can't fight it. Will they become our overlords? Maybe. I don't know. Let's wait and see. Be a teacher. That's for my final thought. Everybody should be a teacher. Spray knowledge. It's the best thing you can do. Again, if I'm talking to coaches, and I know Jason, Gene on the call here, you definitely are, be a teacher and spray that knowledge. It's brilliant for it helps me learn, but I get such a kick out of teaching, and helping. Not so much, I can't do so much now as a leader, but I'll try every day to help people where I can, and don't fear change because it's coming. Whatever you can't fight it, just direct it. And there you go. I'm going to pause now. Gene, that was sort of on the money. I'm a little bit over, maybe didn't leave enough time, but we're a small
All
crowd.
right. Thank you, Tim. It's great. It's very, very interesting experience sharing, especially through your eyes. Folks, we do have a hard stop at one but we do have 7 minutes, so maybe we can take one or two calls. I'm sorry, one or two questions if anyone wants to ask contextually to what Tim has been sharing. Anyone? Anyone maybe knows, something similar to what Tim has
Jason,
described? Yeah.
Sure.
Jason had his hand up. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll ask a question. I'll even make it relevant. Uh,
excellent.
so transitioning from LASD coaching and coaching teams into leadership,
Hmm.
how did you make the jump?
Opportunity. When opportunity knocks, you take it. Now, I'd already done a significant amount of team leadership when I was developing. And then I took a step aside and went into the whole LASD thing, the coaching, teaching, training. Um, so I was familiar in, that leadership level of teams. And I think the most I'd had was a couple of teams. I was across a couple of teams, again, back when I was with JP Morgan. But an opportunity arose about 5 years ago. I joined a company, quite a large company, as an agile coach, the senior agile coach and trainer. And it must have been because I was doing something right. So I was with the teams all the time. I was doing story mapping sessions, and I think the feedback was getting quite good. And they sent me overseas to work with a few teams overseas. They didn't have a VP of engineering, and the CEO sort of avoided me for a few um, months because I was just an agile coach. Probably an overpaid something that somebody's told me we need. And then I think word got to him that I was actually all right and I was a reasonably good communicator. So we got into conversations. We started having one-to-ones, and I think I must have got under his skin. And he found out that I was a software developer. It said of history, and what I believed in, and I was more than just a coach. I actually could still code, and I knew how pipelines worked, and I knew how to build them, and I was a big fan of test-driven development, etc., etc., etc. And he said, "Well, we've got a bit of a gap. This person isn't very good, and I have to move them on." So that was a bit of a. So they weren't succeeding as in that. I'd like you to apply for the role. I was like, "Whoa, seriously?" So I had to think about it, and I applied. I went straight from agile coaching into that VP of engineering role. So for me, it was circumstance and opportunity when I saw it. I did think about not doing it, thinking, oh, I just stay as a coach. It's a great day rate, and I can leave and hover, and all right, you do have some responsibility, but it's not the same response. And then I thought, you know what, life's too short, Tim. Take the opportunity, grab the bulls by the horn, and get into it. So I can't give any deep, insightful reasoning there, but it worked out all right, and I continued, and I did it for 2.5 years after that. So I started as a coach in the organization and saw an opportunity, pitched myself. It's genetics as well. I could talk for whales, and I sold a good story, and we did all right. Yeah, we did all right, and we did quite a lot. I hope that's yeah. Sorry, it might not be the answer you want, Jason, but that's how I did it. And then I've had a few other jobs since then. 2.5 years with that one, and then a few years somewhere else. At the same time, I must put this in. I still go back to coaching intermittently and training. And I've managed to organize my life, even with permanent jobs, where I get 2 to 4 weeks a year to go and teach on a graduate program. And you won't just be surprised to hear which organization that is. And they've come back to me now. So I occasionally am in Jersey City, and I'm occasionally in Columbus, Ohio, once a year, sometimes twice a year, working for JP Morgan as a graduate. And I step away from my roles. I didn't do it this year, last year, but I've been doing that, trying to balance that along the way. But and that's how I keep fresh in the teaching and coaching and techie side, and I get to code a little bit as well.
Thank you for this, Tim. Jason, thank you for the question. Folks, I'm realizing that we are actually at the hour and I need to wrap this up. So I do want you to, I want to encourage you to, if you have any specific questions, always and anytime for any engaging speaker we have, just reach out to them directly. Tim is available on LinkedIn. I'm sure he's a person.
Yeah, just grab me.
Anyone has any questions contextually to his talk or anywhere beyond this conversation, please reach out to him directly. Tim, I want to thank you for joining. It's been a great opportunity to reconnect with you and to to hear your story since we have worked together, which was a while back.
It was a while back, but thanks anyway, and thank you everybody for listening.
Yes,
Oh, you're most welcome. There's a few messages in there saying thanks for the talk. Lovely. It's great to hear.
appreciate it. Yeah, and we will make the recording hopefully available in the next
Sure.
couple of days.
I'll amend the deck. I'll put it into PDF. I'll give it to Eugene.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
please, honestly, I mean this seriously. If there's anything you want to ask me, you can LinkedIn, message me on
Yes.
LinkedIn. Gene will tell you I'm not real-time response. I'm a bit asynchronous. It might take a day or so because I've got a lot of work going on. But you can get me. I will get round to messaging people if they want to.
Thank you very much, folks. Everyone, thank you very much for joining. Enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy the weekend. Cheers.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.